Thank you. Welcome, Danielle. We're incredibly excited to have you.
I am thrilled to be here and participating in such a really meaty and important discussion topic this afternoon. So very much looking forward to it. And thank you for having me.
Yeah, awesome. So we're going to be we're going to continue the digital conversation really about going all in on digital. So Danielle has a tremendous track record of really building and growing brands from entrepreneurial high growth e-commerce to Fortune 100 brands, quite a Rolodex to say the least. Her digital innovation direction transformed a $2 billion organization into a $4 billion leader. You have such a unique combination of brand strategy, storytelling, digital performance, advanced analytics, you name it, right? To really, truly accelerate results and deliver differentiation in places that you've worked. So with all that being said, let's just kick it off first by telling us a little bit about your career path and what really led you to the SVP of marketing seat that you have at Focus Brands today.
Well, and thank you. Gosh, you hear that all together at once and you think, you think that is an interesting background. And, when you talk about career path, I think for me, it's been about having that variety and bringing things together that really helped put the customer at the center of what you're doing and tie that to how you can profitably grow a business. My career path, right out of school, I went to work for a technology company. So I actually didn't start in pure marketing. I started in technology. I used to actually, not something I advertise all the time now, but used to actually do SQL coding and designing of databases. And so I started in technology and in consulting. And what I found was that passion for how customer insight, whether that comes from research or whether it comes from data science, can really inform how a brand should have a meaningful emotional connection with customers, how they can add value to a consumer's life. And that sparked the passion that has kind of informed the rest of my career. So I decided I really wanted to make that happen directly in working for companies. And so went to work for a couple of my clients, including Caesars Entertainment, where I helped to continue the work we'd done in building out their loyalty program and the total rewards program and using that customer data and insight to power the business. And then ultimately ended up running brand marketing studio there and marketing in Atlantic City. So for another day and time are some stories about marketing in Atlantic City in the casino space. But, very creative time and opportunity to be a marketer in that space. And then carried that passion forward for customer insight and centricity, helped Petco to grow and go through a brand transformation, really a digital transformation there as well that grew the business for a private equity transaction. And then I had the opportunity to work for Carl Icahn after that. So Carl had purchased businesses in the automotive aftermarket space. And so I ran marketing and then also e-commerce for brands like Pep Boys and working for him. And now I'm in the QSR space, which, and really it's food and fast casual. And it's a homecoming for me because I put myself through college working in restaurants, managing restaurants, working in some of the Darden brands. And so such a passion point again. Food plays such a central role in consumers' lives. And so at this point, it kind of comes back full circle from an industry standpoint, but really the culmination of bringing that brand storytelling and the data science together to help the business transform and work collaboratively across the organization to bring some digital transformation that will bring value to our customers and to our franchisees.
Yeah, I gotta believe having even just a bit of a technology background, especially in the world of digital that we're living in today, just makes you so much more well-rounded and more knowledgeable as you look to the digital space. So I think that's pretty cool. And I also helped pay for college in the food space. I mean, probably many of us did, right?
I highly recommend working in the service industry at some point in time.
Oh, yeah.
I tell that to my kids every day. I'm like,
I love it. It's great. And I think we have talked to Brand Innovators about having you back for a whole conversation around marketing in Vegas. I do think that would be just a tremendous amount of fun. Maybe we would just do a happy hour or something. I think that would be a blast. But what were some of the real pivotal moments in your career when you really look back on all of that that really contributed to your success today?
And I'll come back to the beginning. I feel absolutely blessed, and a combination of putting in some thought, into the future, and then blessed by finding the right opportunity. So I started off my career working for Teradata, as I mentioned, in that technology space, big data before it was cool. And quite frankly, before marketers in that time frame were seeking out those type of data and technology background. It was definitely the outlier, right? You would have said, hey, if you want to go into marketing, there's a great path that starts with brand management and some of the classic brand training. And so when I think about a pivotal moment for me, it was a personal decision because it intrigued me in the technology space. And then so fortunate, the connections I made both with clients and working in consulting for around 7 years, and then the company itself at Teradata. Some of my dearest lifelong friends come from the clients and folks that worked in that business. And so huge pivotal moment for me that really started the trajectory of my career. I think the other one was moving client side. It's a big change, right? To be in the consulting world and then to move to the client side and fully own that output, but apply everything that you've learned and experienced and continue to have that sense of curiosity. So those are a couple pivotal moments. People will sometimes ask me, what company was your favorite? And I will tell you, I feel like that's picking between your children. It's such a hard thing to do. So I don't love to answer that particular question. I think there are great things that we did as a collective team at each one of those organizations. But a couple of those pivotal pieces were starting, like you said, with that technology piece, which was not traditional at that time, but is so relevant to marketing and the transformation of marketing and digital that's happening right now.
I think it's really great, actually, that you would have a hard time picking a favorite. I think that says a lot about your opportunities and probably how you made the most of each one of them. So I think it's really, really nice sentiment. But are there any sort of just particular things that you worked on or anything that really stands out from your background and experience as just a tremendous opportunity for women? I mean, for women in business. And when you think about that, because you do have, I've worked in automotive too. Like automotive is very different from you were early in technology, right? And when you think about that sort of trajectory, kind of putting that lens on it, I would love to hear a little bit about your perspective there.
Yeah, and I'll tie that together. So I think you bring up two relevant points. So when I reflect on my career and the companies I've worked for, they have been in industries that are traditionally majority male. But there's been a lot of progress that I've certainly seen over the last couple decades in those industries. When you ask about a pivotal moment, and this one intersects as well with women in business. So when I joined Petco, part of what I was asked to do was to help lead their first ever brand transformation. So, brand that had been around for 50 years, but really hadn't at that time ever done a branding exercise and carved out that unique emotional and functional spot in the minds of consumers. And at the same time, I started off there working on Elizabeth Charles's team, who's another wonderful CMO in the retail space. And so this intersects that women in business, where we had such a great teamwork, was supported by a wonderful senior leader in the business at that time. And then we went on to do great things. So in that brand transformation, Petco was behind PetSmart in market share. Like I said, we had the opportunity for the brand identity, and it was just a great case of where we worked across merchandising, marketing, human relations to really have a point of view. And you see the current team there, and super excited to see them continuing in a lot of those themes of, hey, we stand for pet wellness. We stand for what's better for your pets, and we're willing to make those different choices in merchandising. And then from a marketing standpoint there, one of the campaigns we put out won a number of awards, and it was such an opportunity to collaborate with other women creators on the creative side in our business. And the whole heart of that campaign was about that emotional connection with pets. So next to children, and sometimes even above children, connection with the pet is the most pivotal relationship in your life. And so what we did is we said, we want to bring that to life with true user-generated content. So the Power of Together was our campaign. It's going on about a decade ago now. And in that, we used user-generated snippets to really bring that story to life, to say, we have a role as being your partner in parenting your pet. what you feed them matters. There's a way to get more out of that life with your pet, and we're here by your side. And so to see the impact on that business, the doubling of that business, and then that, that kind of continued foundational growth that powers some of the great innovation they've done since, it's something that I'm super proud of. And I think is a great example of, in an industry and in a business that traditionally was heavy in operations, having some folks come in marketing and having some female leadership come in and collaborate together across that organization, we really helped to move that business forward.
Yeah, and I gotta believe, that was 10 years ago, even that utilizing user-generated content and really taking that approach was probably pretty early on in doing something like that too, which I think is really exciting.
It absolutely was. And it took some creativity. There's better ways to do it now. At the time, we found a clip that we wanted, and we had to actually send an agent to Russia to ask for permission from the woman who had the clip we wanted to use. So a little more digital communication these days.
Little different, right? I would love to hear a little bit about, inclusion. I know is a real core value at Focus Brands, and how is this expressed across the organization, especially in terms of even women in leadership there?
It's such a great question. And it's amazing when I look around at our leadership team here. So we have women that are leading our legal team, that are leading our supply chain team. We have a female who is the president of all 4 of our specialty brands and accountable for the P&L of all those businesses. And then also myself as an SVP of marketing and our SVP of operations are also females. So we have a large group of really successful and collaborative business leaders that are women within the Focus organization. And you can just see, the dynamic that brings to the table. And I think it's also symbolic of Focus's overall commitment to, diversity generally, and valuing everyone and every point of view. And how do we bring all those points of view to the table? Because with that diversity comes strength. And so it's exciting to be at a leadership table and see that reflected. And certainly from, women in QSR business, like I said, we have, marketing all the way through to legal and supply chain that are led by women within the Focus organization.
Well, and within your organization, you also have a women's leadership network. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So, I think, and again, for us, it's broader than just women, but it's a huge investment, in women and in cultivating that network. And so one of the outcomes of that, I'll give you an example, because I always think it's helpful to have real life examples. So on an International Women's Day, which was in March of this year, we created a panel discussion where we brought together some of our senior female leaders, and particularly those that have a long tenure in the business and in the industry, because that's really about, tell us about your journey, tell us what it's like, to be a leader in this space, and to talk about career planning. Mm-hmm. And this personal passion point of mine, and I think is just an opportunity for women across all industries, is to be more purposeful about that career planning, to have those honest conversations of what does that look like, and to support the next generation of leaders in their purposeful career planning and build that network of mentors. And so I think it was a really important demonstration. I'm not just celebrating International Women's Day, but how do you turn that into something that actively helps women advance in their careers and in their life, and bring some of our talent to bear to be generous enough to share those ideas.
Yeah, I think, in that one of the earlier discussions, someone had asked the question about what are some networks, that women can really get involved in. There was a lot of good discussion there, but I think it's really neat that at Focus Brands, you do it internally as well. It's not just looking for an external organization to be able to provide that. I think it's really nice that you have something there internally. I think it's tremendous. I want to talk a little about digital with all of with you guys. So, just last week, Focus Brands had an announcement that you're targeting that 50% of your sales will be digital by 2027. And I would love to understand a little bit about what was the vision behind this goal, if you can kind of shed some light on that.
It's a bold statement, right? It's doing its
really
job. It got your attention.
Let's come back in 2027. We'll talk about it then. You know, I'm sure it'll be at or above 50%.
Mark it on the calendar. And look, you know, you ask such an insightful question there, which is, what is the vision? And the heart of that vision is to build meaningful customer relationships and do that in a way that's adding value to our customers' lives, right? Ask ourselves that every day. What can we do more to add value to our customers' lives? And also to add value and drive revenue to our franchisees. So when you think about that digital innovation and vision, we're in the business of helping our franchisee operators be successful. These are people who have, in a lot of cases, put their life savings into this business, and they're as much a stakeholder, but we also have the customer at the center of everything we do. And it's so important in a business to not think about digital for just digital's sake, but to really design that experience in the context of how are we adding meaningful value to customers' lives. So that's our vision. And the reason we think it's 50% is because we think as we're adding that value, so we're making it easier for you to get the dining option you want, whether it's breakfast, lunch, dinner, a snack. All of our brands can serve all of those dining occasions. How do we remove the friction from that? How do we give you the choice? Sometimes you want to come into McAllister's and you want to bring your entire family and have dinner. Other times you need a quick lunch solution while you're at work. And sometimes you're at home on the couch watching your favorite show and you'd love to get a Cinnabon or an Auntie Anne's delivered for a snacking occasion. And so our theory behind that is, again, building those meaningful relationships, removing friction, and having a focus on new member acquisition into our loyalty program. Building that loyalty base is so critical because then the customer is sharing with you their information and you can help them add value by making more personalized offers to them along the way. So acquisition, building that customer lifetime value, not sending the same message to everyone, but you know, if we know you are a mom with kids, you're going to get a very different experience than if you're a 20-year-old male who loves the Schlotzsky's drive-through. And we should be better at doing that. We need to be better at doing that as an industry. Suggested selling, right? And then again, removing the friction. So you shouldn't have to work hard to figure out an app and how to navigate it. It should be easy. And we should remember some of your preferences from the past. So that's the heart of why we believe in the journey and what our North Star is there. And at the end of the day, you know, we're committed to building that infrastructure ourselves. Obviously, we have some partners along the way in that journey, but really, when you think back to the benefit for franchisees, we want them to be able to punch above their weight in those brands. So if we can invest across all those brands in building this technology infrastructure and this digital infrastructure, quite frankly, bringing things to bear that no individual brand could likely afford on their own, that's how we're creating that value chain for our franchisees and our customers at the same time.
Yeah, that's such a great point because you are in this unique position where you have so many brands, right? And you have so many different customers and consumers experiencing, interacting with those brands. And you touched on a little bit, right? That you're just from even a technology stack standpoint, you know, how do you really look across all those brands, and rather than doing things in disparate ways or across disparate systems, how do you take a more holistic approach to whether it's the tech or even how you go to market? Is there efficiencies to be gained there?
There is, and it's one of our largest value propositions to our franchisee community, because again, we can bring tools, we can bring intelligence, we can bring technology to bear and best practices to bear that you wouldn't have in an individual brand, but you have to balance that with the uniqueness of each brand. One of the things that makes Cinnabon special, and if you go to any of Cinnabon's social channels, you'll see it, right? We truly have raving, engaged fans. Auntie Anne's, for that matter. Auntie Anne's is killing it on TikTok as an example right now. And so, you know, you have to keep that brand essence, that, you know, emotional differentiation and the reason for being for those brands, but you do not have to reinvent the technology stack for that. And when you create a technology module, for instance, that could accomplish suggestive selling or personalized offers, absolutely, that's something that you can just, you know, pick up and leverage across this brand. What it's offering you is clearly different depending on which brand you're interacting with, but the technology development and the best practices around that certainly is something that we can leverage scale. And that's true to your point in digital from a technology standpoint. It's also something that's true to your point in marketing when you think about digital in a different context, which is digital media. And same component there. How do we make sure we are putting the practices in place to harness all of that intelligence in the media space and bring it to bear to help drive more profitable traffic into our franchisees' locations?
Yeah, I love the fact that you're taking just key learnings and information and insights from any particular brand and utilizing those learnings to inform, what you might be doing on something else. I think it's pretty tremendous. By the way, please feel free. I don't see any questions in the Q&A channel yet, but please feel free to drop some in there. I'll keep going until we get one, and then we can always jump over there. But are there some trends that you're seeing, especially in the QSR space, that just really excites you more than other things, or just some things that you're seeing that kind of just get you jazzed up and really interested in?
100%. I think one of the main ones is really the intersection of digital and physical, because they are one thing in that customer experience design. And so I think you're seeing different brands starting to have, that realization and put that into place. And when you look at, quite frankly, do we love it at Focus? I don't know. We don't really see them as a competitor, but McDonald's, right? And what they've invested in that loyalty experience and how they brought that to bear meaningfully in the drive-through, but knowing that you have human interaction there as well. And so I think what gets me excited is I feel like we're turning the corner as an industry. Still have a long way to go, even on the basic of digital piece, but really thinking more holistically to how do the digital and physical come together within our portfolio. One example of that is McAllister's. So again, putting the customer at the center and what do they need. Through COVID, obviously there was a desire for less contact in the ordering process, but honestly, even before that, there was a desire for speed of service and not liking to wait in line. And so McAllister's as a brand, we already have over 30% digital penetration. And so we thought to ourselves, how do we bring that into the dining room, and how do we add that value? And so created a concept of tableside dining. And so what this means is, instead of coming in and needing to order at the cash register, or instead of coming in and needing to order at a kiosk, skip that entirely. Come into your local McAllister's, find your favorite table. If you have your family with you and you definitely don't want to be standing in line with kids, even better. Sit down, find your favorite table, simply pull up your app, and based on the table number where you're sitting, you're able to order directly from the table. It starts to feel like a real casual dining experience. During COVID, quite frankly, even a lot of the casual dining businesses, people become used to a QR code on the table to pull up a menu. So it isn't much of a stretch to pull up the app, order for you and your party on the app. And then at McAllister's, we now know your name, right? So we bring out first your drinks, and we're able to greet you by name and start building that relationship physically to complement the digital. Then we come back and serve your entrees and refills along the way and bust the table. And so when you think about that innovation of how do you combine digital and physical, how do you combine that human touch and personalization, and how do you even start to blur the lines between categories? That's an example of that. And I think that type of innovation around the experience is exciting, and there's a lot more opportunities for that in our space overall.
Yeah, and I will say, with a lot of the challenges that folks within the QSR space are faced regarding labor shortages, those are also the types of models that, quite frankly, just from that standpoint, really help support that, right? If you have fewer and fewer employees available in a particular location, or what it might, it would allow you the opportunity to provide a high level of service through digital channels, but still provide this much more personalized touch, even if you might have fewer people that are able to service a particular location. What advice would you give this next generation of women marketers when you think back on your current experiences and you look ahead to what's coming?
Actively cultivate a group that you surround yourself with that will mentor you, that will give you feedback, that will help you map out your career path, and be confident in seeking that out, be purposeful in seeking that out, so that you can both be surrounded by people that are going to reflect back your opportunities for growth, who can be sounding boards for ideas that you might not have even thought of down the road in your career path. You can also show you the ropes and help pass on some of that knowledge, purposeful around your own career desires, around your own personal brand, and then cultivating a group of trusted folks around you who can help do that. I don't know, that women historically have done that as well, quite frankly, as men. And I think you have to be a little more purposeful, particularly in industries that are still have a heavier concentration of males, to think about, how do I do that? How do I own that? And really think about creating those relationships, asking people, not being afraid to ask people, hey, I'd love just for you to give me a little bit of your time, but explain why, and take a very purpose-driven approach to that. I think surrounding yourself with that group of mentors, coaches, and sort of people who will give you that honest feedback is tremendously important to cultivating your career and opening doors that in some cases you might not have known exist. In other cases, maybe you couldn't access on your own.
That's such a great bit of advice. If you think back to your own career and your own trajectory, were there particular individuals or times where you really had just tremendous coaches, supporters, or influencers that helped you along the way?
Yes. And I think I'll go back to that transition from consulting into the client side. And when I moved over, particularly into Caesars Entertainment as an example, David Norton at the time was the chief marketing officer there. And, I was obviously younger in my career, but you have someone who, both believed in you and who I personally actively sought out as part of that relationship when I was on the consulting side. And it's an example of that combination of that right intersection of someone who is willing to give of their time. You have a fit as what you can bring to the table in your skill set, and in me as an employee, and then being planful, like I mentioned, in that. And so I think, at each point in your career, when you're finding yourself thinking, do I want to change companies? Do I want to change industries? Have I been focused in this area of the business and maybe I want to try something new? I think about who it is that would have some insight into that, and don't be afraid to go seek and ask some of those questions.
It looks like that's great, by the way. And I just think it's so important to have those people throughout your career. And I loved also your earlier comment about sometimes people open doors you didn't even consider or think about, right? Or you might find a new opportunity simply just by engaging with and talking with and being open to talking with people and asking questions of your network. So it looks like in this chat, there is a question. Well, focus. I love it. You probably get that a lot, right?
Nicely played. Yes.
I love it. On targeting specific communities such as military, teacher, et cetera, to drive acquisition, consumer lifetime value, and loyalty, similar to how Sonic extends exclusive perks to teachers.
Great question. And we do now, and we tend to do that with an entire celebration wrapped around it. So we have, for instance, teachers and nurses appreciation that happens in a couple of our brands. And our thought process behind that is we don't want it to be merely an offer. We really want to engage our community. So some of those programs are asking for people to submit some local heroes. Others of them are ability to enter kind of in a sweepstakes, but we're trying to create that two-way dialogue that really talks about those people as the heroes in our community. And then, yes, of course, have specific offers that, members of that community can receive and get, but we want to make it more about that engagement and really celebrating the great work and the direct impact on their communities. Those we do at a national level. At a local level, we have a lot of our franchisees who are just super embedded in the communities on a day-to-day basis, in the schools, with some of the healthcare workers. And that's such a core part of the DNA of several of our brands, particularly on the restaurant side, where you are truly part of that community. Happens a tremendous amount in our Moe's brand, as an example.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot of support for allowing franchisees and you're empowering those franchisees to take part in their community and do more local level, either marketing or support beyond the national.
Absolutely. And we
Yeah.
encourage it. In fact, purposeful conversations about, hey, let us cover these things nationally. And then here's some opportunities and some toolkits and some playbooks that you can really use to drive those relationships in your community, because that's how you become more than just a service outlet, right? You're really building, again, those relationships in the community. And some of that work is physical as much as we're doing that work to build relationships through digital and technology.
Yeah, and it's great that you provide the playbooks and the support and really empower and enable them to do that on behalf of the brands, which I think is great. We have another question. With you and Focus being so forward thinking, what's next as it relates to the metaverse, NFTs, cryptocurrency? By the way, we're hearing a lot of those questions and having some really interesting conversations around this as well. So I'd love to hear your point of view on this.
Oh, it's a rapidly changing landscape, and particularly when you think about currency and payment. We've seen several time horizons of change in payment behavior. I think we're on the cusp of really what's next. And so our view on this is remove friction from the experience, right? And so look at the highest penetrated areas of payment as an example right now, and let's make sure we're taking that and we're doing it flawlessly. And then we'll watch and build technology for some of those future components. But I think there's so much that's going to just unravel day to day as the entire kind of industry overall, and really consumer behavior overall looks at how do you really adopt those. How does that work in your day to day? But our first pieces are to make sure we're focused on what can we do to build those relationships and remove friction, rather than necessarily being tip of the spear for some of those new payment components.
Yeah, and I think you bring up such a great point. Companies and organizations have very different points of view of whether they want to be tip of the spear, cutting edge versus fast follow, or other approaches when it comes to such new or such innovations within the digital space. And kind of when you look across your brands, do you have a similar perspective as to where Focus Brands wants to play in that way, or does that truly vary brand by brand?
Certainly I would say just overall with technology adoption, it does vary brand to brand. And so, McAllister's, I mentioned a bit ago, having over 30% digital penetration. They're definitely one of our leading brands at the moment, just generally speaking, in how consumers want to engage digitally with us. But like you said earlier, we have that goal of entire portfolio getting to 50% over time. Mm-hmm. And so we'll build our way there, as we build, like you said, those modules, and then we'll be able to deploy them across all 7 brands. So you build it once, and, it's something that each of those brands can put to use. So that's been our main focus and philosophy, and letting the data guide us, right? Where are those opportunities? Where are the meaningful opportunities for the business? Because at the end of the day, we're stewards of driving profitable revenue for our franchisees as well.
Yeah, that's such a great point. How do you stay on top of the trends, right? The digital trends and things in the space. We've heard others in earlier sessions just talk a little bit about either things that they read or groups that they belong to, or just even what you said, what's the data tell us, right? How are you staying on top of really these types of things?
You mentioned so many great examples. So we have, a digital and the technology team that helps power this behind the scenes, and they spend a lot of time from just, pure technology standpoint, like you said, in various different groups that they're members of, and in cultivating those conversations. I think, to give you an example on the other end, we really not only encourage, but we just do regularly make sure that we're getting out in the marketplace, not only in the restaurant space, but constantly looking in all areas of consumer services and of retail to say, who's doing something new? What does that look like? And I think there's just such an intrinsic value in going and experiencing that as a customer, as a shopper, as a client yourself. And so really purposefully making sure that we're getting out in the marketplace and we're looking at that. And like I said, not only outside of our direct competitors within the restaurant space, but in the broader consumer space, to be really looking at what does that feel like? What does the experience feel like that's being brought to life? Where are those points where we'd say, hey, we could adopt that, and I can see it and I can feel it, and I can tie how the operations and the marketing and the technology would come together for that as well. But quite frankly, I think it's an opportunity for our industry to share more of where does everyone get their inspiration from? What are some of those, great groups that we should all be a member of? So I would love to see that list coming back the other way around too. I'd find huge value in that.
I think that's such a great point. I do think one of the things you brought up that was really interesting is looking beyond your own space. Right. I think in talking to a lot of certainly our clients, they look to retail where retailers were years ago, and really look at a lot and get a lot of inspiration from the retail channels in the retail space. So I think it's great that you're looking beyond just QSR, beyond even just restaurant space in general, and that you're exploring other spaces. And with that consumer lens in mind, I think is really great as well.
Well, and you're right. And as an industry, we have progress to make, and we have other industries we can borrow from. When I think back to what we were doing at Caesars Entertainment over a decade ago,
right?
We're just as an industry with our loyalty program starting to scratch the surface of some of those things that existed, but that's because we haven't had that level of data availability. I mean, a Starbucks aside, right? But really to harness the information from a loyalty program properly, you want to be getting that history. You need that granular data. You need to understand the differences in how customers are behaving so that you can put that to use in the personalized offers and communication to the customer. And I think, we do have those other industries to borrow from who now have pushed so far beyond that we need to continue to be looking in that direction.
Yeah, when you had mentioned, and we're speaking to your experience prior at Caesars, all I can think of was like, man, loyalty. Talk about having just really knowing and understanding who your customers and visitors are, and being able to truly tackle it one-to-one one-to-one personalized experience. That industry has had it figured out for quite a long time. And so I do think it's even just that, in bringing that sort of learning forward, and how do you start to do some of that in the space, I think is really interesting as well.
Absolutely. And that was part of my excitement in joining the team at Focus, is being able to collaborate with all of the great individuals at this organization to bring some of those things to bear.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Wow. That was phenomenal. I love the fact, Danielle, that you're not only thinking of your external stakeholders, your customers, but also your internal stakeholders and what's good for your franchisees and things like that. I like the powering the scale of that, but keeping the individual brand marketing efforts genuine. I learned about phygital, which I thought was fidgeting, but the physical and digital, and your innovation, and supporting us women. That's awesome. Thank you so much. This was really a remarkable conversation, and I want to just keep hanging out, but all good things. So we hope you'll both come back. Katie, you are a moderator to Beat the Band, and Danielle, you're in it now. You're part of the Brand Innovators community. So here we go.
Well, wonderful. It's been a pleasure to have a chat this afternoon.